Hello and welcome to day 110 of 365 days towards racial change. My name is Tomlin's Nyback. We're here discussing black issues in America. We want to see how blacks are getting along. We're reaching way back into history to see how and if certain conditions still prevail, if black people have progressed, regressed, remained stagnant, hit a ceiling, escalated in American society. We look at it from a lot of different angles. 110 days in, there's a whole lot of pieces to the puzzle, a whole lot of moving parts to get our head around what's happening with black people. I believe something's happening with black folks in America, and it's important to get a grasp the best we can on it. You may not agree with my views. Please leave comments, respectable comments, because it's all public, and we can debate and talk about stuff. So it's not a hard line, and it's not a hate channel on YouTube or anything like that. There's a lot of other aggrieved groups, a lot of other people interested in just living their lives freely, identifying as who they are. I'm all for that. But I've got a special burden being black, and I feel like there's a need to be very exclusive and explicit about the message that blacks need to hear, that the agenda blacks need to forward as we continue on with this series, wherever it goes. I had lunch with a great friend of mine today, and we, it challenged me, and I find I'm stumbling around articulating this argument adequately. I believe. I think it's going to take me a whole 365 days for people to understand. Two thoughts have emerged as I've gotten to this point. First thought has two parts. First part is, does the slave mind still persist, prevail amongst black people? Has the conditioning from the 16, 17, 1800s still prevailed? Are we still finding issues and problems stemming from Jim Crow, semi-slavery, from all kinds of racism and prejudices in America? Is that still a pressure on the minds of those black Americans, those especially descended from slaves? And the second part, second side of the same coin, is, does the white mind of entitlement, privilege, expectation of favor prevail through systemically through culture of white America and all the other races and tongues in between as well, Arabs, Asians, Hispanics? Stick around, you'll know how I feel, but I want you to think, do your own research about this. Also, now the second thought is a kind of a burden for financial literacy. I had in my talk with my friend today, I did admit, I don't know what the school curriculums are like lately. In my day and in his day, he's a few years older than myself. Financial literacy, education, guidance toward entrepreneurship, at early ages, understanding corporate structures. These things were not taught in school. We learned how to add and subtract. That was it, but nothing, nothing as far as being an independent business owner, calling the shots. School was all about sitting there, public school anyway, sitting there and receiving, and it's a conditioning in school. It prepares us to be better slaves, you know, to work for somebody else. Well, you know, where's the problem is, who are these people I'm working for? Why am I being trained to work for them? Why is that the default? You know, why not train me to be like them? Hey, you know, and there's a lot of reasons for that, I'm sure. Some it just happened that way. Some could be designed, embedded in the American culture. Anyway, I'm concerned about financial literacy, political literacy as well. Very important. So those are the emerging thoughts. If I ever get the opportunity to really make some changes in America, then you know, and make some influence, then I'm going to get out there and champion more education in the American school system anyway, especially for Black people. I'm inspired by a man named Dr. Claude Anderson. I've read 3 of his works. I want you to get these works if you can. I got these in a blog from his website, one of his websites. The first is A Black History Reader, 101 Questions You Never Thought to Ask. Black Labor, White Wealth, Search for Power and Economic Justice. And Dr. Anderson's National Plan to Empower Black America, Powernomics. You can find Dr. Anderson at powernomics.com and the Heritage Institute in Washington, D.C. Also, get this book as well, Uncle Tom's Cabin. It's a good read. I'm almost finished with it, but we chime in, take a chapter or two, or split a chapter. We ran into a long chapter a little while back. Going through a series now, but we're going to pick up on this in a couple days. We're almost through with the signers of the Declaration of Independence. Uncle Tom's Cabin, written by Harriet Beecher Stowe, mid-1800s. Oh, it depicts the life of Uncle Tom and other slaves. Interesting story and segues and twists. I like how it reads and how this woman's work is so important in American culture. We get blackface, we get stereotypes of Black people, white people in here, and some other. She reveals some things I didn't know about the condition of slavery. So check it out for yourself. Do your own research. Always, I encourage you to think above all. Thanks for being here, but be a thinker. Behind me, hashtag us too's Black women supporting one another is kind of a response to the hashtag Me Too movement. I'm not against any movements, but somehow some Black women felt they were not being served by the hashtag Me Too. So here you go. Oh, go check out Black Enough, BLAGGENUF. It's kind of a Black Facebook. And if you found me here, then you're literate in the information age, and you can find your community and your flavor easily on the internet. Always, I encourage you, above all, most importantly, to think. All right, day 110, we're continuing on in our series signers of the Declaration of Independence. We want to see their minds, see if we can get into their motivations. You know, what I'm doing, what's happening to me is that as I go through this, I'm seeing I need to put in. I'm filling in some gaps in my understanding of history, especially this. We'll say, let's see, this is 2019. So say the last 500 years on the outside. How I got to be where I'm at, feeling how I'm feeling, going motivated to do this project. I'm just a little speck on this 500-year relatively timeline, and I'm finding some ease. I'm finding some peace as I fill in, because the history is very white, very male. A lot of success there. It's about gatekeepers, white male gatekeepers allowing things to happen. I was just thinking about women and the white power structure. They gave them the right to vote. The white power structure gave blacks their freedom. The white power male is always giving out. I mean, I can hear myself, but do you understand what I'm saying about who's in control? Now, my bottom line, I've got two laws that I do my best to live by. I don't do them perfectly, but those two laws are real simple, right? Do no harm to self, do no harm to others. You know, we can talk about religion and all that, but even if I did not have a religion, I do believe those would be foundational truths for myself. Now, the second thing I want to say briefly, before we get to this, is that the world is ours, and there's a ridiculousness to what humans do on the earth. I mean, think about it. We are such a tiny speck in the universe, in this physical space. We're killing, fighting, struggling, coercing, maneuvering. It's really ridiculous what we're doing here. So I say all that to say that signers of the Declaration were people with their issues, and boy, if they woke up on the wrong side of the bed one morning, war could begin. The people are enslaved, and all this stuff. Uh, you know, I'm glad. It's just there's just so much, and I'm just talking 500 years or in relation to this country. The country is not officially 500 years old, but I'm talking about the beginning of racism, essentially, in the 1400s, discovery of that free labor in Africa and the institution ramping up, and then this boom of this free land and resources here in the Western Hemisphere. Interesting time for the world, and fast forwarding up to 2000, almost 2020, and so my own laws for myself: do no harm to self, or others, the best I can, and the world is ours, is important. I want to say that I say that to tie that in to I want to live my life on the earth. Can I do that? Probably not. Not the way that I'm envisioning it. Do I go up in the hills and the woods and the land? But but now I'm conditioned to participate and be a recipient of the infrastructure, electricity, sewage, clean water at the, you know, you know, turn the faucet, clean water, unquestionable. Clean food, So I'm born into this system, and there's a lot of automation there, but my individuality uh, is the struggle, and I think it should be the other way around. I don't know what I'm getting at. It's a lot of things pushing right now. But this lunch with my friend has probably got my head going. All right, day 110. Two more guys. Let's knock out. Two P's we're on. First guy, Robert Treat Paine, born 1731, died 1814, Massachusetts representative at the Second Continental Congress. Second Continental Congress was where the Declaration of Independence was signed. And it was signed, its politics, that's when it was signed, and we have July 4th and all that. But there was a lot of stuff before. It's the Second Continental Congress, so there was a first. Articles of Confederation, all that, and all. As I go through this, now I see America's corporate identity, business. We're a nation, and we can have nationalism and patriotism and all the politics and all that, but nations are businesses. Try to. If I extract some of my moral leanings, religion, and stuff like that, and simply look at America and other nations as businesses, the president is the CEO, things become actually much more clearer and simpler on those points. Robert Treat Paine, so he was a justice. I think that comes out more in the notes. Two things that stuck out. Remember, I'm referencing Wikipedia. I'm not going to the library and reading thick books and biographies of these guys. I'm not. I'm interested. I'm not that interested. But two things stood out in the research today. He prosecuted the British soldiers and the commander involved, those guys involved in the Boston Massacre. Look that up. I didn't go deep into that research. And he's noted also for prosecuting people involved with what was called the Shays Rebellion. And this is interesting. Remember how we talk about the colonists, signers of the Declaration, whoever, the white male power structure at that time. They severed their ties from England. They felt they're being treated unfairly, taxation and all that. And then they turn 180 degrees and apply the same pressure, exacerbating their pressure on black folks. We know that story. But, a lot of white folks got caught up in a lot of issues there, especially after the Revolutionary War. We're more comfortable with it now, I think, but let me just back up. What we're comfortable with is our taxation. We know we're taxed, and it's kind of commonplace. But you need to understand it wasn't always that way. You got these guys building armies, sending soldiers in response to a foreign taxation. So they can't be all that aggressive in taxing the people after they just had a war over taxation. So they implemented it. But as they do it, the common folks, they don't have that geographical divide. Everybody's shoulder to shoulder now in the new emerging continent and territories. But as you grow, you get friction. So this guy, Shay, organized a couple thousand guys, tried to arm themselves and rebel, but that was put down. And it was put down by a militia, a privately funded army. So they didn't have taxation in place where we can call up a National Guard and reservists and stuff because our taxes are dispersed to our military and we can make it happen. But remember, there's a starting point to all this kind of activity. So taxation is it's frowned upon as the taxation institution grows. It's it's part of the infrastructure that I just talked about. The most recent example I can think of is Obamacare. Let's get everybody to throw their money into a big pot. He should not. It should not have been an explicit healthcare agenda, because I think Americans who are aware know that you're just building some fund that people are going to screw up and rape later on and defund later on anyway, like Social Security and Medicare is happening. Also, I have problems putting my money in a pot where people who aren't necessarily on my side or for me. Those are the two things of note. He was a Congregationalist. Initially, his father was a reverend, but Robert Paine's church moved, embraced Unitarianism. God is one, no Trinity, and he went that direction. Being up north, he wasn't. There's no slave commentary associated with his life, and he signed as a representative of the people of Massachusetts. All the signers were representing some people from somewhere, and I mean they had their personal agendas there, but they had the blessings of a whole lot of people from their respective states and colonies. Next person up is John Penn, born 1741, died 1788. Another guy, not a whole lot of commentary on him. Most of these colonies, they sent more than one representative. I guess like they didn't have a firm representative system in place yet. That was still growing. Everything was emerging and growing, and they were still, getting the political house in order. But the people they sent, maybe if I did some research, I'd probably see that they came from social centers, cities, highly populated areas. It wasn't just a couple handful of farmers sending a guy to sign a Declaration of Independence. No, the cities, the density of population, and it's just like that today as well. Those centers sent representatives. So, however many of these population centers, these cities, there was represented by the number of men they sent from the colony. The colony had 2 big cities. They probably sent 2 representatives to talk about this. And these are good old boys in a lot of ways too. A lot of them educated in the same spaces. No notable schools have yet popped up in the southern states, but you have the schools in Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, New York, and of course the grand prize back then is if you go study in England. It's like going to Yale, Harvard, or Rutgers, Princeton, some of those prestigious old money schools up there, you know. Oh boy. Violent education, expensive, and name dropping of money and stuff like that. Oh boy, it must be brutal, brutal. John Penn, born in Virginia, representative though in the end of North Carolina. Virginia, North Carolina, southern colonies, so his relationship with slavery was consistent. He was surrounded by the institution. Abolitionist rhetoric is at a minimal. For these, it was like a degrees, you know. Further south, you get Georgia, South Carolina, Alabama, you know, whatever. We got to get the crops in. You know, we don't talk about abolition down here. But Massachusetts, Connecticut, you know, up north, New York, you know, we talk abolition because it's more industrialized. Things are just different up north. Um, Uneventful life and career, slave states, no religion associated with Representative Penn here, and he signed also as a will of the people. You know, so we're getting a picture here. You know, people had complicated lives, priorities, um, no simple uh, no simple answers to the slavery question. Like, you know, remember, see, what's happening, you know, I wish, you know, we receive and send information in such a singular way, but our, how we understand things and receive, you know, it comes in it's one chunk at a time, but we just, I wish we could, or maybe the brain does, and we just aren't aware of it. But I wish we could consciously put all the dimensions in view at one time, at the one simultaneous moment, because the signers had their complicated lives based on their geography, history, health. Slaves are coming in. At this time, you know, Britain is actually flooding the market with slaves. This is causing another dimension of pressure on the colonists as the black population is growing and they're outnumbering the white population, where the white population needs to develop militia, and this is happening, and taxation and pressures. You know, every time somebody comes off the boat from England, there's a new tax law. There's massacres. There's rebellions. You can't get people on the same page. And if we could absorb that in an instant, we have just such a clearer picture and understanding the motivations of stuff, you know. But we don't uh, conceptualize time and reality like that. It's more we think in straight lines and events and stuff like that, and understanding uh, the dimensionality of what's happening at a specific moment in time. It's hard to comprehend, hard to appreciate, you know, those other things. Ask those questions. You know, what was going on? You know, um, you know, why were you? You know, How could you, white male, back then, sever yourself from this institution, but then become the very institution from which you severed yourself, and turn and oppress a people, and not even just a people, just create other institutions and issues that that make, you know, make living in the world a challenge. Oh, it's a long story. I'll probably never get to the bottom of it. But this has given me a great catharsis. Thank you for hanging out with me again for this short period of time. Day 110 out of the way. Come back. We're going to do 111, day 111, and have some fun. Oh boy, we're rhyming now.